John, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. A dominant issue has been the delay to the Copland Stand works. Can you explain the chain of events there that means we'll now start the season at Hampden?
Yeah, I think it is important to look at the chain of events. And look, people like to say, quite rightly, nature abhors a vacuum. Okay, and I'm fully aware of the vacuum that seemed to be created. Nobody was straining more than myself for clarity and for certainty. I have wanted to deliver a certainty that we couldn't deliver. And I'm going to come back to that. And I apologise again on behalf of this club for the uncertainty it's caused our fans. I can assure the fans that the people in this club are working tirelessly to get this done. We need to finish the job. We must also not lose sight of for whom this job was undertaken. Our fans, and in particular our disabled fans. We have to finish the job. We will finish this job. And again, what gives the board, one of the things that gives me personally, the will and the strength to get this done is the people. The people for whom we're doing it, our people, our fans. They're also the people in the club. I see what they're doing. I see the work and how they're rising to this challenge. We'll finish the job. The context is very important here. So if we just stand back a minute and look at the context of what we are dealing with. And it's what we're dealing with here is a materials delay. We have a delay mid-shipment of our materials. And we're not alone, because it's happening globally and it's happening to so many entities, if you like. Our situation is we have 3 consignments on 3 vessels making their way to Glasgow. Pinch points are the ports. Singapore, probably the biggest. Vessel number 1 has arrived. It is in Glasgow. Those materials are in Glasgow, and we await vessels 2 and 3. I talked about materials consignment number 1 in Glasgow. Let's talk about 2 and 3. And this is where, I've been straining to get certainty, and I think you can probably see that. I even mentioned it in the statement that we put out. The one thing we crave is certainty, and I can't give it. By God, it's an understatement for me to say that's frustrating. It's more than that. So, as things stand, delivery number 2, and it's on delivery number 2 that we will begin, when that gets to Glasgow, you're going to see what I would call the beginning of the final installation. We need those 3 consignments to hit Glasgow. Only 1 has arrived. When delivery number 2 comes, you'll see the beginning of what I would call the final stages of installation. That'll take time. It's not final a few days. As things stand, subject to further slippage, and it frustrates me that I have to keep caveating it that way. That is scheduled to arrive in Glasgow in the 2nd week of August. Vessel 3, shipment 3, is scheduled, as things stand, to arrive in Glasgow in the 3rd week of August. Then we can begin to think about timelines. And when I think about timelines, it's an aspiration at this stage, because again, I'm caveating it. There is still uncertainty. If I think about timelines, clearly it's in terms of timeline of us returning to our home, which we all desperately want. Clearly after the September international break, and it's a case of, how long after the September international break? We can aspire for that to be at the end of September, but it's an aspiration, and I am sorry that I have to caveat this. It frustrates me so much that I have to caveat it, but I think I've given the reasons I have to caveat it, the shipping situation. So yes, I can have an aspiration. I can get our people back into our home. Final game of September. But yes, it could slip beyond that.
Obviously going to be at Hampden for that period. Can you just tell us why that was chosen as the venue as opposed to Murrayfield or maybe a restricted Ibrox?
Yeah, when I got the call, if you like, in June, that all those assurances that the board had received, both written and verbal, that all was on time. Well, when I was told that is not the case, you have to then as I've said, get a grip of it, but also to say, okay, we have to implement contingency. Now, what I wanted from that moment, when we realised we have to decant. We're not the first club that's ever had to decant, and we won't be the last, but it's happened to us. And I said to the board, the number one aim here, as we decant, is maximise the number of our fans that can follow their team and minimise the disruption to those fans. So for me, of course, the prime choice, and we had some choices, or we had some options, for me, prioritise Hampden for our fans. We know the geographic dispersion of our season ticket holders, etc. Maximise the number that you can get, so a stadium big enough to house them and minimise the disruption. That's why it was all systems go for Hampden. And I thank, again, our people in the club for what they're doing right now, and we can maybe talk about that and the challenges of that, mapping seats, etc., etc. I know what Susan and her team are doing in the ticket office. I know what others are doing in facilities, in security, in hospitality. They're working so hard to make this as seamless as we possibly can, minimise the disruption. But the other people I want to thank are our counterparts, specifically at the SFA, because they also rose to this challenge and they acted like partners with us. And that's what you need. You know, I always, in times, I've said this to people in the club, in times of crisis, you find people out. You find out who stands up and who hides. And so many people in the club have stood up. And the SFA stood with us like partners, actually, in this. And the SPFL I want to thank as well. And I talked earlier a wee bit about, you know, nature abhors a vacuum. And I was very aware of the vacuum, and there was nobody straining more than me to give me certainty, I want to give our fans certainty. I want to get the message out. Where are we? And for all the reasons I've talked about, you couldn't do that. An element of that was also when you are trying to secure that venue, or any venue, it's a multi-party arrangement. You know, people talk about stakeholders, if I can use that term. It's not just Rangers have made a decision and that's the state of it. You have to have, if I put it, your partners, your counterparts, sign up and agree to that. And that does take a bit of time. And you have to coordinate. So it's not just a case of Rangers putting out a statement saying we're off to Hampden. You have to get the agreement in place. And that does take time. It's multi-party. And again, as frustrating as it has been for everyone, there was no one more frustrated than myself, because I was desperate to get out there and say, get it done, get it done, get it done. It's been a challenging summer.
You talk about the work going on behind the scenes there to get this move underway. Are you able to provide an update for the fans on when they're likely to receive some clarification on where they'll be seated for that Motherwell game?
Yeah, and again, that is, I mean, we've talked about 24/7 working on, again, people in the ticket office and elsewhere. That's a very good example of people working weekends, working around the clock on precisely that issue. I'm hopeful that by the end of this week, we can provide that update.
Just moving on a bit now to the club finances. Can you give us an update on what the current state of play is with the club's finances?
Yes, I very deliberately called out a number at the AGM, and it was not an overstatement to say that upon becoming chairman, my number one mission off the pitch was to rid the club of pre-player trading losses. And I called that out at the AGM. That number to June 23 was £10.5 million. That's unsustainable. And we should talk about sustainability, financial fair play, etc. That right there is wholly unsustainable. And I said that has to go away. Well, you can't just will things to go away. It takes action. If I look at that number, That is well on the way to being eradicated. And that's taken a lot of work from a lot of people. And I have driven that. I've driven hard. And it's been hard on some people, for example, to drive that through and execute it. But execute it we must. I'm not having a club, because we'll come to player trading and the famed player trading model. We need to address that. But first, get after what I called low-hanging fruit. This club should not be losing £10.5 million pre-player trading in a year. My goodness me, totally. So when I became chairman, it's not an overstatement to say this required cultural change. Football clubs are brilliant at wasting resources. Really, really good at it. I talked to, obviously, loads of people around the country, across the UK and in Europe. Football clubs are really good at spending other people's money, at wasting resources. We were good at that as well. And that's changing, big style and fast, because it had to change fast. That's cultural change. That has required people change. We're not done in terms of that cultural change. There's more to come. Eradicate that 10.5 million. That is not a sustainable business model if you're sitting there with that kind of number. And that's before you come on to player trading, which we should come on to.
We are in the midst of a transfer window at the moment. What financial backing have the board given so far in this window, and is there more to come?
Yeah, I think that there's often talk about the phasing, and I've seen that talk about the phasing of buying and selling. If you actually look at the facts, not just in this window, but prior to this window, how has Rangers operated? And I actually want us to get away from how we've operated. But how we've operated has been, the board has essentially backstopped each window. The board has backstopped each window. Yes, I've seen player plans in the past where outgoings will match incomings in financial terms. That's your plan A, say. That could be plan A. I've rarely seen plan A executed. It always seems to be, no, we have to backstop it. And that's what we've done. And that's, again, what we've been doing in 2024. If I take 2024, the January window and this window, excluding loans, we're double-digit millions in commitments, in transfer payables. So excluding loans, we're about 11.5 million in thus far on transfer payables. So that is permanent transfers, not loans. And loans, they're not free. They come with loan fees, they come with agent fees, they come, etc. So that's where we are in 2024, about 11.5 spend thus far.
What has Philippe Clement brought to the club since he came in as manager in October?
Oh, I think Philippe brought a lot of things, a lot of the right things. And, it's maybe sort of unfair or wrong, or you're going to miss certain other points or words or strengths if you only mention one or two. Leadership, which is crucial. He's brought that vision. And he's all in. Philippe, like a number of us, he's all in on this. And when I say he's all in, I've been struck by something that I completely endorse that he's said only recently. And he's been very, very clear. And that's regarding the player trading model. Transfers, if you like. When Philippe's been asked in the media about incomings and the transfer strategy, the recruitment strategy, Philippe's been very, very clear, and he's nailed it, and we endorse it. And that is recruiting for the long term as well as for the short term. And he's actually gone further than that. He's actually said recruiting only for the, if I can paraphrase him, recruiting only for the short term, only for the short term, has caused problems historically. I completely endorse that. Even to the point of, say, lessons, and at times brutal lessons, have been learned. Now, this is a really tricky one in terms of the balance the situation you have to navigate. This is not easy, and it's not going to be easy. This long-term, short-term recruitment strategy, because Rangers, I've said again recently internally, there's a twin imperative here now. There's a twin imperative. Rangers will always have imperative number one. It needs to win. This is a club that needs to win. I've spoken to a number of clubs in Europe that they don't need to win their league. And it's quite an interesting conversation, because I would contend they get a lot more time to, say, build a player trading model or any model. At a club like Rangers, you don't get time, you don't get time. So imperative number one, you got to win. That won't change. Rangers is compelled to win. That's the impulse. That's why it exists. It needs to win. Won't change. But the second imperative is, if you're really serious about building, and I've heard that a lot in recent years internally as well, and it again frustrates me probably as much as it frustrates every Rangers supporter. I hear a lot about this fabled, almost mythical player trading model. I hear a lot about it, but it's not up and running. I don't see it. That would be an accurate observation and criticism. Imperative two, if you are going to build a truly sustainable operating player trading model, having fixed the line above it, the pre-player trading losses, well on its way to being fixed. We need to get after this now. If you're going to be serious about doing that, then you have to invest in player recruitment for the long term as well as the short term. And I said this is tricky. That's a really challenging route, if you like, thing to navigate. And it's not done in one window. I like to think that people can see the complexion of this window has long term in it as well as short term. We'll never lose that compulsion, that need. I'm a Rangers man forever. We need to win. We need to win every game. It's every trophy we go for. That's your aim. But if you only recruit for the next season, say, only for the next season, that's where you get into that, I think, loop. Philippe talked about this is a bigger rebuild. He said to me at the end of May when we sat down, John, this is a bigger rebuild. We sat down in May and reviewed the season. This is a bigger rebuild than I expected. And that's what he was referring to recently about expectations when he came in, expectations in May. This is a bigger rebuild than I expected. It's the first thing he said to me when we sat down for the review in May. I said, Philippe, me too. Not least since given the investment we'd put in the prior year, but me too. So that's what we've got. We need to grip it. And he gets that. He talked recently about the alignment. He's all in on this. And he's aligned, he and his team. And as you say, we've strengthened his team recently with the appointment of Andres. Fully aligned with this. Because you're absolutely right that if you only recruit with the short term in mind, that player trading model that people like to talk about will remain the stuff of myth. And we have to make it reality. And what I've said is, if Rangers were to continue down that path of short term in its player recruitment, look at the amount of changes this club's had in recent years at manager level, for example. And I've said to my board colleagues and to others, while I'm chairman, I want to end the years of rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. And I think you know what I'm talking about. By October, there are big changes at the club, hugely damaging at every level, financially, etc. That must end. We must all be all in. Philippe's all in. We're all aligned. And we have to deliver. That very tricky challenge we have to rise to.
In terms of off the pitch, how is the search for a new CEO progressing? Do you have an update on when they will be in place?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that absolutely everything was parked when I got this call in June that we had this materials delay to the Stand project. I wouldn't say everything was absolutely, everything else was part, but it kind of was almost like that. The first priority was dealing with that. But so everything else was kind of slowed down. But that's been my other objective, is to get that delivered. And I hope to have some news pretty soon that about our CEO.
As we end this interview, do you have a message for the supporters?
Yes, I guess, because I'm one of them, and it's a message for me as well at a really challenging time. And I don't sort of make any bones about it that this has been probably the biggest challenge I feel. We all face, you get challenges in your personal life, don't you, your family life, and those are the big challenges in life. But outside of that, it's the biggest challenge I've faced. But you need rise to challenge. You don't really have a choice, do you? You can either fold or not, but we don't fold. We don't fold. Rangers people, Rangers fans, I'm one. We've been through adversity, a lot of adversity, this club, and its glorious history. And this is a moment of adversity. This is painful, personally painful, bruising, challenging, all of the above. But this club's got a remarkable ability to rise to challenges, and it will do that. I've talked about the challenges right there, the stand, the project. Never forget for whom we're doing it. Never forget for whom we're doing everything. The fans. Well, we're here to win for them. We'll complete that project for our people. So it's a moment of adversity. We've been through adversity before, this club. Bigger, way bigger adversities. So we don't get consumed by this. We stand up. We stand up and we grab it and we face it down. We finish the job.